Okay, there's been a lot of speak about having paid reviews or reviewers who don't know what they're talking about. Many other things of people review bombing the game, The Last of Us 2, on Metacritic or other sites. And let's just clear some of this stuff up. I highly doubt every single site has a metric of 0 to 10, which is highly objective and highly mathematical. It just doesn't work that way. People do not become that critical or use that kind of metric all the time. Very few people do. I would argue none of the video game websites do, unless they actually show you the breakdown and explain how things work. For example, here's one on Screen Rant. This person, Leo Fairman, says, "You've never played anything like this. This is Naughty Dog's magnum opus. It is among gaming's greatest achievements." Like, okay, fine. It's a beautifully done game. They put a lot of effort into it, a lot of polish, but they're still polishing a broken plot. When you have a plot that's broken, you have a waste of time. You have an ending which is unsatisfactory. You have a character whose desires do not get met, and you have a whole lot of time wasted because you never gave us what the premise of the story was, which was a plot of revenge. The point of a revenge plot is a dead body. You want a corpse somewhere at the end of the story based on what you wanted. Usually the individual person will then become a corpse. That's kind of the point of a revenge story or a murder plot or that sort of thing. Now at the end of this, we're not going to go through all this, but at the end of this is what this person has to say. At nearly 30 hours for a careful playthrough, its intensity and relentless narrative will put players through the ringer long before the brutal end, but most anyone will be better for it, tears and all, and very possibly transformed. That does not necessarily mean a good story. Yes, we like to put our characters in a story through the gauntlet of conflicts that they are part of. This is natural. But most anyone will be better for it. That's like saying, oh, you know what? It's going to be great learning about your characters hurt themselves or be hurt in the process. Not necessarily. It's how the conflict is done. Then this is the part that is over the top. The greatest game of this console generation, of that, there's absolutely no doubt. Now, to argue that this is the greatest game of, I don't know what the console generation is in relation to the PS4, but I'm assuming it's Xbox and Switch and other things like that. I highly doubt this person used any metric. Is this amazing gourmand of video game playing, that they've tried all these games, all the AAA big budget games from all the big companies, and they can say this is absolutely no doubt the best out of this console generation. That's a big hefty claim. So you can't take this person seriously. They're not being critical. They're not being objective. And then they have to say this. It's also quite possibly the greatest video game of all time, which is absolutely insane. That is absolutely insane. You cannot say that. That is like saying my house is the best house of all time, or my pair of shoes. Like I'll pick any piece of media, pick any creation, and look at it and point, this is the best of this. It's silly. That's the silliest thing you could say. And this person is just a waste of time, much like apparently the plot of the game is. So let's look at Metacritic. Now I'm just going to look at the comparison between first the user score and the Metascore. Now it's possible all of the critics are wrong. It's possible all the users are wrong. It is possible. Everyone can be completely ignorant and stupid and not use any metric and not use any objective observations and conclusions. That's possible. But let's look at just simple numbers here. Here we have roughly 100 people giving it roughly a perfect score. Roughly. A little off here and there. Here we have almost 13,000 people giving it a very low score. Basic math, this is about 99% of the reviews are done by simple people. Again, these people can all be wrong the same way these people can all be wrong. We don't know their metrics. We don't know what they're saying. We do know Metacritic does favor actual critics from other websites more than other critics from other websites. We don't know why this is the case. Maybe they're favoring one because they have paid advertising. We don't know. It just doesn't make sense when you do basic math and you score up all these values. They do not add up to what is shown on the screen. This has been known for a while. This is why we don't really use Metacritic for this sort of thing. So when we see things like review bombs, we go, what does this really mean? How does this work? What is the value of these ratings? And the best thing we can do when we look at all of them, of course there were some scores that weren't valid, but the best thing we can do when we look at all of them is look for the most helpful. Now the most helpful rates these values as the best ratio between likes and dislikes, or helpful and not helpful. So you're going to see like 16 out of 18, 333 out of 385. So it's the most helpful out of the least helpful. So we can keep going down this list. You know, I'm not going to, like, some of them are very detailed. Like this looks like a very good detail. A person has standards. They have quality standards. They look at gameplay, they look at graphics, how the game feels, what it sounds like, the music, all these details. And they go, oh, the con. What's the number one con? The story, the character development, the plot holes. These are all the things that you want a character or story-driven game to be. And it's failing on that enough to get a 4. Even though all of these things are beautiful, they sound good, they look good, it has an atmosphere, there's a certain vibe with the music, which is all basic stuff. And yet they can't get the story right. So we're going to go for some more 4 rated videos. Another 4. Neil tries to be Hideo Kojima. The graphics and gameplay are great, but those things don't make up for the awful story decisions. Everyone's talking about how bad the story is. Another 4. Here's a big one. Graphics. Stunning displays. Sound, again, on par with the first. Gameplay is, for most part, on par again with the first. Few additions. Sadly, storyline. Kaboom. Broken game. Go for another 4. I'm only giving this a 4 because I generally feel bad about the part of the team that was not involved in the story. This could have been great, but it's a pile of garbage full of plot holes thanks to the A-star story team. This deserves a 3 out of 10 at most. This person's feeling sad. We don't know their metric. We don't know what they're scoring this as, but they know there's quality in there. And they say, you know what? Everything was great except the guys who wrote this story, which is not what you want from a game like this. You want a meaningful, impactful story with a plot that has a payoff, a plot that has a goal. This game is a living statement that money doesn't solve all problems. Graphics, great. Truly impressive. Story, trash. Character development, trash. Character relationship development, trash. Gameplay, straight out of 2013. And honestly, all these game critics who gave this game a 10 out of 10 are shooting themselves in the foot. Look for another 3. Oh, sorry, here's a 4. Wow, just wow. Did you know revenge is bad? No? Well, this game will take 25 hours of your life just to tell you that in fact it is. Naughty Dog just went full The Last Jedi on this one. Okay, that's enough to say there. So I'm not saying the 0s or the 1s or the 2s or 3s are bad. I just want to try to get the highest rated out of the lowest scores. It tries so hard to be an Oscar bait movie that I forget that it's a video game and a zombie apocalypse story. Dollying up the tragedy element doesn't make it original, and too many things are there just for various degrees of shock, which is essentially what a zombie horror survival story is. It's a shock game. It's all these crazy mobs of the undead trying to eat you, which is boring and unoriginal, and that's why we don't like watching or reading about zombie stories. And we were hoping that The Last of Us, at least the original game, was more original and focused on a more unique and humane element, like the story of a surrogate father and their daughter. And then they kill the father off in the first few hours of the second game. There's a message about the nature of humanity in there, but it's not very different from what you can find in a typical 17-year-old edgelord art project. Oh dear. Visuals are great, gameplay is really similar to the original, story is stupid. The way they tell a story with flashbacks, etc. just makes it worse. Now that's an interesting point to make. Flashbacks are not exactly the best storytelling method. You do flashbacks because you sort of have no other method, or that's the best way to tell what happened in someone's past. You either have an entire chapter dedicated to a story or someone's past, or you have reminiscence of two characters talking about the past. Flashbacks are fast and quick and dirty, usually. And apparently that happens a lot in this game. There's lots of flashes with Ellie remembering Joel. Even at the point of the ending, when she's about to get her revenge, and she gets a flashback, and boom, she stops getting her revenge for whatever reason we don't know. Another 4. Technical part is amazing. Shadows, light, awesome. But story, so bad. See, this is what I like about criticism. You don't have to be a genius. You don't have to be the most elegant or eloquent with your verbiage and your grammar. You don't have to play games too much. But everyone knows what sucks. Everyone can tell you why a story doesn't work. Maybe not accurately, but there's some feeling, some sense of loss or value that's not there. And that's what I've been trying to say to people. When some people say a game is great, that's a very bold claim. Any piece of art or story which is good, you have to justify. You have to use your criteria to say why it's good. What makes this thing good or better than something else which is good? That's tough to do. But something that's bad or misses the mark or sucks or is doing something wrong, very easy to point out. That's why criticism is easy. That's why you can get any person to say something sucks. It's how they describe it and why. But everyone knows when something is bad. 99% of these reviews are negative. I want to iterate. Doesn't matter how talented and gifted and experienced and how much schooling a critic has. If you are being confronted by the masses and they all say exactly the same thing, gameplay is pretty good, graphics are amazing, sound is great, music is great, story is garbage, plot is garbage, who are you going to believe? Why? And I don't need to hear every single explanation of these scores why the story sucks, but you get a general feel of the general populace, why this is. The Last of Us is a bad game, well made. Production value is obviously quite high, and those are the 3 points I have to give. Because the gameplay is boring and stale. So this person doesn't like the gameplay. It's the same as a 2013 prequel. It is outdated and doesn't bring anything to the table. And the plot, and that should be the highest point of The Last of Us 2, is just plain bad. Really, really bad. Would not recommend to anyone. So here we go. Again, it's getting review bombed not because there's some hate campaign for it, although I could argue that might be the case. Oh, now we're up to 13,000. It's because people who have actually played it don't like it. Now, we've said this when the leaks came out, or critics who haven't played the game, obviously, when the leaks came out. We say, oh my goodness, this is going to be a bad experience. Fans aren't going to like this. They're going to see their heroes get killed. They're going to see their father figure get killed. They're going to see themselves get killed because they were the father figure. And then they have to play as the antagonist who killed that character. How do you think that's going to make them feel? You have to climb 2 giant mountains to make this work, as I said before. You have to demonize Joel, and you have to uplift or make the reasons for Joel's death very important, very explained and understood. And both those things never occurred. You could be as dramatic as you want. You can care for all these characters all you want, even the antagonist. If you don't make it make sense, if you don't sell us on the death of a protagonist and then a story of revenge, and that story of revenge doesn't go anywhere, you're wasting all of our time. You're selling us a bag of goods that no one wants. Anyway, guys, thanks for listening to me ramble about the joys of reviews on Metacritic. Some people are out to lunch, but it really comes down to the layman giving you their opinion. That's a general opinion that anyone can relate to. Something is good, something is bad, and that's that. Thanks for listening, folks. Have yourself a great day.